Test, 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 test. Test. Okay, cool. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Spencer Riegle. I am representing DARMA Capital Trading, and today we do weekly podcasts to talk about fact-based trading solutions, what's kind of going on in the market here and now, and then we talk a little bit about macro, and then always about micro when it comes to what bids, what liquidity is sitting in that Bookmap that everybody has up. So first introduction, if you have not tuned in, we do this a couple times a month when markets kind of slow down. We're going to try to pick up the frequency this year. So I am the chief crypto options trader and strategist at DARMA Capital Trading. Feel free to reach out to me at _RIEGLE on Twitter or X, and then LinkedIn, Spencer Riegle. Feel free to reach out. So before we get started, we always start off with some disclosures. All information and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Trading futures, equities, and digital currencies involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Our goal every week is to provide tools to make better decisions, right? At the end of the day, trading is a risk-reward game, right? And we like to say only use risk capital. What do we define as risk capital? Risk capital is capital that you're willing to lose. It's always important to start every presentation there because that is our goal, is to talk about risk. If you've been on, you know that we kind of start with the macro and then we head into more of the weeds, right? The weekly outlook, and then we go into a bit of a strategy, right? So let's talk top down. We're probably going to keep it a little bit shorter today. It is Tuesday here in Chicago. I am based in Chicago. It is January 7th. January 7th is a big day, right? The first week of trade. More specifically, yesterday was the real day back to the desk from the holidays for most folks. So macro sense, the year's just getting started. Last year was an incredible year for crypto. Bitcoin did around 125% annualized, and Ethereum was around 45%, which underperformed, but still pretty positive year for Ethereum, right? That is front and center for most fund managers. That is front and center for institutional money. That's front and center for basically anybody that's looking to allocate fresh capital that they get on their year one, quarter one balance sheets, right? All right, now you have a VC that has U.S. clarity or U.S. support for the first time, and they're looking to deploy capital. That is net positive usually for the space. January, there is a fund saying in January where it says don't short Jan vol. Reason for that is a lot of decisions need to be made, right? And so if you think about vol as a component of an option, as a component of the underlying market, vol increases oftentimes when deals increase, right? When things need to be bought, things need to be sold, that's when movement happens in the market, right? So those are fundamentally things that are happening in the market, and that is just a function of year one or Jan 1, quarter one, the first basically week of the month, and the first week of the year, right, and first week of the quarter, right? And so outside of that, the market is also looking at a binary event, right? That binary event is Jan 20. We've been talking about that for a couple months, and that is going to be either a buy event or a sell event, right? It's hard to say at this particular point in time. Oftentimes markets price in prior to the event, so we'll have to wait and see, right? But broadly, right, if we're talking about macro, a U.S. regulatory clarity in any regard is seen to be positive, right? And so we've seen a lot of that pricing in since November 4th. We will see if there's more pricing to be had, right? Obviously, we're going to have to lean on Bookmap and look on Price Map to see if the structure is holding. But if the structure is holding, then this year is not a normal year, right? That's the That is the mandate, and that is what needs to be understood, right? So the first time since the industry's existence, there's U.S. clarity, or there is moving towards U.S. clarity, right? So that is fundamentally different than anything we've seen in the past, right? So let's dive into kind of the weekly outlook. So there's a couple charts that I have up over here. So on my right, you have Bookmap, right? So we'll dive in there. And then on my left, you have Price Map. If you are unfamiliar with Price Map, that is our quantitative and qualitative data. It's been operating for over 30 years. Its inception story was back in the pits a long time ago, which is a fun story if you are in the Discord. If you have any questions, feel free to hop in the Discord. We are in there, and we are going to be talking and answering questions whenever they're dropped in, right? And so on the left, let's take a look at Bitcoin first, right? And so all these lines and colors mean something, right? But let me explain to you a little bit more. For those that have been around, you know that the first number in which we look at on a weekly basis is the directional, right? Over the directional is positive, under the directional is seen to be negative. If we base over the directional, where are we going to go, right? The expectation is if we base over the directional and we can get a hold of the previous week's close, anything over the previous week's close is fundamentally positive on the week. Why? You pull up Yahoo Finance, Google Finance at the end of this week, and Bitcoin's over last week's previous close, it's going to see positive, right? So those will be green numbers. That is a fact of the market, right? Let me zoom in for everybody to see on YouTube. If you are on YouTube and you're watching the recording here, make sure to hop over to the Discord as we are talking in there about everything and anything we're seeing. Okay, so we define what we consider to be the critical range as the UP down to the DP, right? UP down to the DP. If the market obtains the previous week's close, where's it going to go? It's going to test the CR plus, right? A market that tops at the CR plus has the possibility to rotate lower to the CR minus. However, the basing here over the previous week's high into Monday's open yesterday seemed to be positive. Immediately the extension to the UP, right? The upside alert distance here is your first tell that you're going to get what we call a UP breakout. If the market can't extend into the black here and stalls anywhere in the red, the expectation immediately is digestive trade, right? If the market's good, digestive trade targets 100,000 here through the duration of the week and potentially bases for that next extension to 106.4. Or if the market is negative, you'll see a trade under the previous week's high, right? That validates the break here of the CR plus, and it targets the weekly directional again, right? For a lower trade, because we are entering the 7th day of the month, we see this as the end of the opening range of the month, right? So decisions need to be made in the first 7 days, and then decisions need to be made for the duration of the month, right? Because we are in the yearly open, quarterly open, it is to be expected that things are a little bit more volatile, right? So where would that volatility to the downside target? 93,900 is not out of the question. That would be a normal range of trade for the week, right? And a further extension, if this market were to really break, would target 89,740, right? While the market is positive here, anything over the previous week's high still remains positive, and the market has an opportunity to test higher. The fact of the matter is that we held the 102.252, the weekly UP. If we base over the 100, we have a chance to test the 106. If we break the previous week's high, it's more likely that we remain digestive for the week. And we see the week closing Saturday, 6 p.m. Chicago. So over here in Bookmap, let's take a look. This is the multi-book, so this is going to show you multi-book perp, right? And so this is perp liquidity that's sitting across multiple different exchanges. Where we see the resting bids, 100,000, liquidity acts as a natural target in the market, right? That's right in alignment with our expectation here for the digestion from this weekly UP. Target the weekly 100, right? The weekly CR plus. Let's hop over to Ethereum. Take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum is, again, a little bit less bullish, right? A little bit more digestive. So the number to talk about is the weekly directional, right? 3604 defines over-under number. Over the 3604, the market needs to really base over the previous week's close to fundamentally be positive on the week. Otherwise, it's unchanged if we trade in this range, this tight range here. So a base here targets the 37.29. The fact of the matter is that we held the weekly CR plus with Bitcoin strength. It looks to be a little bit more digestive, right? If Bitcoin breaks and the overall market breaks, right? Ethereum remains weak relative to Bitcoin. Then the expectation is a trade for the lower range of the critical range, and that is that 34.11 level, right, into weekend. Weekend is, again, Saturday, Chicago at 6 p.m. We see it as 0 UTC, apologies. If the market's good, right, and let's say that it's going to outperform on the latter half of the week, where would the first signs of that be? Well, you need to see basing here and now, right? Which we're starting to see based the weekly directional. You really need a held trade over the previous week's close, and then for the market to even have a chance higher, basing over the previous week's high would fundamentally be positive, right? If we were to base over the previous week's high, we really need to take out this week's high. Basing over 37.29 is that level. We see on the right side here, Bookmap, we have some resting liquidity in the perp market, right in line with that expectation, right? 37.29, 37.70, or 37.40 is in Bookmap. It's right in line with this week's high, right? That's the reason that liquidity is sitting there. The downside liquidity, so if the market were to really trade lower, 35.80 is sitting in the book. Why? 35.80 is basically that price structure low, right? So psychologically, a lot of buyers would want to step in right there and support those lows. If that market breaks, then the price structure of the market on the weekly broke, right? And that means it's important to always think, okay, there was a buyer there. If we break that level, where are we going to go? 35.08, that buyer's underwater, right? And so where would they puke? Right? Puke meaning get stopped out. Previous week's mid makes a lot of sense. 70 points lower, right? 70 points in Ethereum is fairly normal on a daily basis. And then you get that extension down to the 34.11, right? Again, what are the facts of the market here and now? Resting liquidity in alignment with 37.40, which is that upper CR plus. The fact that we held here opens the door for a CR rotational trade on the weekly that targets the 3,500. Where would that be even in play? 3604, but more specifically, if you really want to look into the resting liquidity in the book, 3580, 3575, right? You got to take out that buyer. If we can't take out that buyer, then the market's going to be supportive, right? And that is also a fact, right? So we're looking at two facts here. So because the directional is green this week, we see that to be the sentiment bias. The expectation is we're going to trade. The market can move free. It is a balanced trade for the week. That would make sense for the first week of the year. So anything and everything is on the table, but so far off the open into the first 3 days of trade, right? Sunday, Monday, and now into Tuesday. It's been digestive in showing a potential for a CR rotational lower, right? So that is the expectation of the week. feel free to hop over to Discord and ask questions. We are looking at some daily charts as well over here to help support some of the underlying thesis here on the weekly and give a little bit more color in alignment with Bookmap as well. So again, feel free to reach out to us at dharmacapital.trade. My name is Spencer Riegle. My email is here as well if you want to reach out personally, or I am more often on Twitter. So if you want to reach out on Twitter, _RIEGLE. Thanks.